Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
We welcome you to Hour 2 of our Friday get-together here on Catholic Answers Live. This is Tom Price. I'm here at the studios of EWTN Radio in Alabama, filling in for Patrick Coffin. My buddy Patrick is off today. He will be back on Monday. And we're certainly, I really want to thank our guest in the previous hour, Robert Spencer, talking about the real Islam. We all learned a lot that hour. And I think we're going to learn a few things this hour, too, and it promises to be a fast-paced hour. If you have children nearby, I might recommend that because of the delicate subject matter, you may want to check out the podcast at a later date, or listen some other way to the program, because we're recommending some parental guidance on this particular hour. Obviously, when you're doing a show and the title of the show this hour is called Atheist Lesbian Turned Catholic Mom, you're going to get some controversy. That's just kind of the name of the game. But we are here to talk with Melinda Selmys. She is the author of Sexual Authenticity, an intimate reflection on homosexuality and Catholicism. Melinda converted to Catholicism from a lesbian atheist background. She now writes for the Catholic Press and engages in what she calls guerrilla apologetics from her home in Ontario, Canada. And welcome to you, Melinda. We're delighted to have you on.
And I'm delighted to be here, Tom.
You are up north in Canada, where you got some snow earlier today, right?
Yes, that's true. I live on a lovely little hobby farm about 10 minutes outside of a town called Tweed that no one's ever heard of.
But it's a beautiful name, I think. It's just, it's got that college professor sort of a feel to it, sort of.
Yes, well, it's a beautiful town as well. Its major features of attraction are painted fire hydrants with faces or dragons on them, and an annual Elvis impersonation festival.
Sounds like a great place to live. Now, obviously, the reason we have you on today is all about your book and the incredible journey that you have taken. As we were saying in the introduction there, before you became a Catholic, you were involved in a lesbian relationship for many years, but now you're married with 6 kids. So there's a great quote that I have with one of our hosts, who likes to say, "So you were born, and then what happened?" I've always liked that. So tell me how you got on that particular journey.
Well, I would first like to give a caveat. When I was writing my book, it was quite a challenge for me to try to express the story in 230 pages.
Sure.
And the 2-minute version is a little oversimplistic. The reality involves things like a druid sorcerer, a Zen koan, and my grandmother's ghost.
Wow.
But if I can put it very quickly, basically I was an atheist, and I at some point had this massive structure of rationalism that I'd built up. And I got in an argument with a friend of mine over some cherry-flavored tobacco and brandy about whether or not religion was real. And he wasn't Catholic, and I wasn't Catholic, but oddly enough, he gave me a copy of Thomas Merton's 7-Story Mountain, which I read. And when I finished reading it, I thought, oh dear, my entire outlook on life appears to be founded on arrogance and pride, and I didn't like the cut of that jib. So I decided that I was going to have to look into this God figure question, which I did, and eventually I came to the determination that I had to embrace this frightening heteropatriarchal God in the Catholic Church, and that sort of meant giving up the relationship that I was in. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well,
but
I think it does. And, obviously in a program like this, one question leads to the next question. And when we're talking about something like same-sex attraction, it is a very mysterious thing for somebody like me who just says, I don't get it. So tell me a little bit about what took you to that same-sex attraction, or when did you realize that was a force in your life, and then maybe we can take it from there.
Well, this is the definition of sexual orientation, which was given by an award-winning lesbian psychologist, Susan Cochrane, and I think that it will help your listeners to understand the difficulties involved in answering that question. Mm-hmm. She says sexual orientation is a multidimensional concept including intercorrelated dimensions of sexual attraction, behavior, and fantasies, as well as emotional, social, and lifestyle preferences. And I would also add that gender identity and social roles are an essential part of the mix. So there's, a very long process of different facets of that orientation or identity fading in or out over the course of my life, probably starting at about 9 to 11 years of age.
I imagine that you were a very intelligent young girl.
Yes.
As I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm thinking, okay, but that's kind of going over my head to just think, well, I'm a guy and guys tend to like girls. So maybe it's my own simplistic attitude on life that is keeping me from embracing all this. But what I do hear, but what I'm hearing you say is coming from a point of depth.
Well, I think the issue, part of it, is that for women, sexual attraction tends to have more to do with emotional relationships with particular human beings. One thing I've heard over and over and over again from women who identify anywhere on the spectrum from bisexual to outright lesbian is I fall in love with a person, not with a gender. So that, for a lot of men, it has to do with what exactly their sexual responses are, and that's easier to observe directly if you're a guy than if you're a girl. So for us, it's less of a question of did I feel this particular concupiscent movement of the flesh at this particular time, and there's a lot more fluidity, which makes it, in many cases, more confusing.
We're speaking here with Melinda Selmys. She's talking about her journey, her incredible journey from an atheist lesbian to a mom, a Catholic mom. This is quite a journey, and I know that we're going to be taking quite a few calls on this. Our phone number, if you'd like to get in now, is 888-318-7884. That's 888-318-7884. We haven't really talked yet about the atheist part of your story. How did that come about?
Well, I was a somewhat precocious child, and I think that a large part of it was that there was a disconnect between the level of intellectual engagement that I was getting within my church and the sort of level of intellectual engagement that I desired. I couldn't get into that happy, clappy, Lord, I lift your name on high youth group spirituality, so I became increasingly alienated from, I was a liberal Anglican, not a Catholic. But then what happened eventually is I started to encounter more and more texts that dealt with a deeper and more meaningful spirituality, and that really got into the guts of issues like suffering and redemption and these massive archetypal epic themes, which appealed to me very much. And so that drew me in a way that the fluffier manifestations of Christianity had not.
Let me get back to what you were saying earlier. You used the word spectrum when you were talking about sexuality going from perhaps bisexual attractions all the way to a strong militant lesbian. Is that is there a way out? I guess is what my question is. Is it possible for someone with even that very strong same-sex attraction to enjoy the healing that you're clearly coming from?
Well, it's a very difficult question. Most of the people who I've met who have transitioned from a gay or lesbian identity into a heterosexual marriage would first of all tell you that they are not completely quote-unquote straight. Mm-hmm. And I would certainly say that myself. There are residual things that need to be dealt with, or simply elements of personality that never quite fit into the straight world. And those do not go away. With people who have extremely deep-seated homosexual attractions, at the moment there's nothing that has been proven to be very effectual apart from the quest for chastity, and I think it's an absolutely beautiful vocation. I know some Catholic men whose stories have been a complete inspiration to me, and they're amongst the most beautiful individuals that I know who have sought that course of chastity and heroic virtue in that way.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break here because that's what we have to do. But when we come back, I want to talk about one of those men, Steve Gershom, who has also appeared on Catholic Answers Live, and an amazing quote that I picked up off of Facebook, and then went to his blog to make sure that was legitimate. So we'll talk about that after the break, and we'll take your calls at 1-888-318-7884. Talking here today with Melinda Selmys here on Catholic Answers Live.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live. If you've been saving your change for when you could finally afford to buy all those great faith resources you've always wanted, now is the time to act. Log on to Catholic.com and you'll find almost everything we sell is available at 10 to 25% off the regular price, and in many cases even more, but only through the end of the year. Our huge Christmas 2011 sale features all of our books, audio and video products, dozens of great new titles, special packages, and much more. As the most trusted name in apologetics and evangelization, Catholic Answers knows you're looking for items that are true to the faith and will engage those who use them. That's why this Christmas we're making sure you can save money on the materials you need the most. Take advantage of our huge Christmas sale now by visiting Catholic.com, or you can get more details by phone at 888-291-8000.
At Catholic Answers, we talk a lot about church history, the church fathers, the saints, and so on. These are men and women who wanted nothing more than to see the faith remain alive and strong for generations to come. We know you share that conviction, so we invite you to discover the Catholic Answers Legacy Society today. Simply log on to CatholicAnswersLegacy.com to learn more.
Don't miss the Good Fight this Saturday. Future saints Diana Clee and Jane Wilmer, wives and mothers, will discuss the holy, daring, and fearless trust of Saint Therese of Lisieux. That's the Good Fight, Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
The Good Fight comes to you live each Saturday only on EWTN Radio. For times in your area, log on to EWTN.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Tom Price here filling in for Patrick Coffin today on this Friday here in the second week of Advent. We're delighted to have you along. Here's our phone number, and that is 1-888-318-7884. 318-7884. As we mentioned at the top of the program, parental discretion is advised on this hour because it's a little bit on the delicate side when we're talking about matters of sexuality. Today with Melinda Selmys and, atheist, lesbian, turned Catholic mom. And Melinda, I want to kind of get your reaction on these words from a rather brave man, according to his writings here, Steve Gershom. He wrote this, and just want to get your reaction. Where are all the bigoted Catholics I keep hearing about? When I told my family, apparently when he came out a year ago, not one of them responded with anything but love and understanding. Nobody acted like I had a disease. They love me for who I am. And then here's another quick quote. If I want open-mindedness, acceptance, and understanding, I look to Catholics. And then one more, and then I would like your reaction. He says, yes, it's hard to be gay and Catholic. It's hard to be anything in Catholic because I don't always get to do what I want. Show me a religion where you always get to do what you want, and I'll show you a pretty shabby, lazy religion, something not worth living or dying for or even getting up in the morning for. That might be the kind of world John Lennon wanted, but John Lennon was kind of an idiot. Now that is an honest viewpoint. I don't think you're going to hear anywhere else. Not that I'm not saying certainly anything bad about John Lennon, but there's a certain amount of bravery here to say any of this.
Well, I think it certainly was my experience within the Catholic Church in Toronto. That it was very loving, accepting, tolerant, etc. But then there's also the fact that it's a city where diversity, our strength, is the city slogan, and there's a rainbow underneath it. I've heard very different reports about the attitudes of Catholics around different areas of North America. And I think what Steve is describing there is absolutely the way that Catholic witness should behave, and in many cases does. Unfortunately, in some cases it does not. And I think that's why the Vatican has specifically in the Catechism referred to the fact that homosexual persons need to be treated with respect and with compassion in order to make it clear that there are two sides to the Church's teaching on this. It's not just, oh, you're evil and you're disordered. It's also you are a child of Christ and you are in need of love. Very good.
Let's go to the phones now for your questions or comments for Melinda. Here is Christopher in New Haven, Connecticut, listening on EWTN.com. Hi, Christopher.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Thanks
we can.
for calling.
Okay, great. Quickly, a bit of background. I have a 23-year-old daughter who recently came out to us that she is a lesbian. She has a girlfriend. They are not living together because my daughter is still receiving financial support for us. She's still in college, and we have told her that we can't financially support that living arrangement, but we otherwise have been, I think, been very loving towards her and trying to understand her. Melinda, in your book, I read your book, and you also sort of made this point at the beginning of the show that you gave up your relationship with, I think your friend, her name was Michelle, that's
actually a pseudonym, but go on.
But that you gave up that relationship because you were becoming a Catholic. So is that all there was to it? I mean, do you no longer feel attracted towards women, or I mean, was it purely an intellectual thing? I mean, I think you did give an excellent explanation again at the beginning of the show how it's much more complex with women, that even my daughter made that point that women are more fluid in their sexuality, whereas men, it seems to be either they get turned on by guys or they're turned on by women, as it seems to be purely, or at least fundamentally hormonal. Whereas with women, it's very emotional and so on. And I will also mention that my daughter does suffer from depression, and we think she might be abusing alcohol as well. So, she had, I would say, a less than perfect childhood, a lengthy illness.
Sure. Christopher, we do need to, we need to get to some of the other callers. So to sum up, your question for Melinda was, have you just given up the relationships, or were you able to overcome the attraction?
Yeah, basically.
Well, okay, the first thing is I have an email address, melinda@vulgatamagazine.org. Vulgata magazine is all one word, and it's Vulgata like Jerome's Vulgate Bible. Mm-hmm. And I would urge you to email me, because I have so much more to say on this than I can say in the next minute or so.
Sure.
What I would say is that for me, I still experience most of my sort of random attractions, where I look at someone and think, oh, aren't they beautiful, would be towards women. I am in love with one particular man, and I think that married connection is of infinitely more importance than where my eyes happen to be inclined to stray. But that is what I've heard from almost everyone who sort of comes into a heterosexual marriage out of the gay scene. I don't know if that answers your question entirely or not, but
yes, I think it does. Thank you.
Okay.
And then perhaps you can follow up with that email. That's very good to know. Thank you, Christopher. Let's move on now to Sherry in Portola Valley, California, listening on Immaculate Heart. Hi, Sherry.
Hello. I have a question about the early religious training that didn't capture your intellect or your imagination the way Seven Story Mountain did as a young woman. And my question as a catechist is, what would have quickened your heart in the same way as a young person? I understand completely what you mean about the, kumbaya, fluffy training. What would have quickened your heart earlier as a child, as a very intellectual and obviously articulate child? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not sure. The way I eventually sort of came to Catholicism was very much via beauty. I encountered the poetry of John Keats when I was about 14, and that line, beauty is truth, truth, beauty, just captured my heart and sent me off in search of the truth. I don't know that that's something that I could have sort of done in any other way. And the theme of beauty is one that I've encountered a lot of times, not just in the stories of gay and lesbian people who have come to the church, but also with anyone who has a sort of solitary spirituality. There is unfortunately relatively little that exists, possibly that can exist, to capture that audience, because they tend to be skittish, alienated types. But
what about, did you read any C.S. Lewis or George MacDonald or even Tolkien? Do you think?
Well, I read The Lord of the Rings, but it didn't have a big part in my conversion. Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, on the other hand, did. I also read C.S. Lewis, but that was later, after I was already a Catholic. But his work is certainly wonderful.
Okay.
Very much. Thank you.
All right, Mary, thank you so much for calling. Before we're actually going to take a break here in about a minute, so we don't have enough time to take a call and really be fair to that call. But you mentioned the magazine Vulgata. Can you tell us a little about that in just a few moments?
Well, it's an attempt. I actually haven't put anything up in over a year because I've been very busy with 6 children.
Oh, wow.
But it's an attempt to try to produce Catholic media that's directed towards a darker aesthetic, which is sort of in the line of the memento mori of the past, or perhaps to reach people who aren't caught by the mainstream aesthetic of Catholicism.
Sounds fascinating. We'll perhaps talk about that a little bit later on. You're listening to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking to Melinda Selmys, who has a fascinating story. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. 1-888-318-7884. Back in a moment on Catholic Answers Live.
For every Marilyn Monroe, there's a Mary Magdalene. For every Joan Jett, there's a Joan of Arc. And for every Lady Gaga, there's Our Lady, Eternal Queen of Heaven. Inspired by these great women saints, Catholic Answers Leah Darrow, one-time cast member on the reality TV show America's Next Top Model, now travels the country helping young people, especially young women, know the importance of maintaining their dignity and their relationship with God. Order her DVD From Top Model to Role Model today for every young woman you know. Leah Darrow has spent the summer delivering the vital message of chastity to young men and women across the nation.
Don't you see this, that our culture sometimes, it encourages us to sin?
She packs a lot into her dynamic presentation, even pointing out where today's young people can begin to make a difference in the lives of those they know.
There's such a drought of love and mercy all over the world.
You've got to know young people who need to see this DVD. Order From Top Model to Role Model today from Catholic Answers at 888-291-8000 or Catholic.com.
Did you know that all of the books, DVDs, and CDs that Catholic Answers publishes can be found as close as your neighborhood Catholic bookstore? That's right. Catholic Answers partners with hundreds of Catholic bookstores across the nation and the world to bring you quality resources in the area of apologetics, evangelization, and chastity from a name you know you can trust. So visit your local Catholic bookstore and see what they've got that's new from Catholic Answers. You can also find us online at Catholic.com. Catholic Answers, the most trusted name in Catholic apologetics. Catholic Answers. Our success depends on you. Visit Catholic.com to see how you can get involved.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We are talking with Melinda Selmys, and the title is pretty self-explanatory here, Atheist Lesbian Turned Catholic Mom. What a journey it is. Let's go now on the phones, and Mary in Seattle listening on 1050 AM Sacred Heart Radio. Hi, Mary.
Yeah, hi, Melinda. I had pretty wild life myself, dabbled in, I actually thought I wanted to marry a woman, and I think for me, I was raised a Catholic, and it had walked away from the faith, and,
right.
And I had such an experience with God to where He made it known that the lifestyle that I was leading was wrong. I mean, so I guess my question for you is, at what point did you believe that homosexuality was wrong?
I actually made a deal with God when I first sort of started to have an inkling that He existed. I said, if you tell me that I have to be either an evangelical fundamentalist or an Orthodox Jew or a Roman Catholic, then I'll give up homosexuality because I don't want to do this salad bar nonsense. but please tell me that you're a woman and that I can be a neo-pagan, which of course was not at all what he said. So what happened is that there was a moment when I was praying and I realized that I did, in fact, believe in this Catholic God that I'd been terrified of, and I thought, well, if I believe in him, I can't go back and renege on the deal that I made, or he'll probably send down thunderbolts. So that was the point when I went home and I called my girlfriend and I said, I'm becoming a Catholic, so we have to break up.
And I mean, were you in the Word and reading what the Word said on? I mean, especially like Romans, it's just blatant,
Well, I had actually been given a copy of The Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality from the Pontifical Council for the Family, about 6-7 months earlier, completely unrelated to this. I was working on an article on PFLAG in Catholic schools, and I thought, that all makes tremendous sense if you believe in a deity who's ordered the universe and who has said that sexuality is ordained for this particular purpose. This is a rationally coherent view of sexuality, but it has nothing to do with me. So it wasn't really the biblical texts at all. It was the coherence and interior rationality of Catholic sexual teaching that got to me.
And I guess, my question to you now, I mean, where you're at, because I know from my experience now, like I have a couple of high school buddies, who I'm talking with now, and they're straight up gay. Don't want to hear about. I mean, my brother gave me their email address because I said don't give out my email address, to any of my friends because my past. I just, I'm not on Facebook, none of that,
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm now talking with a friend of mine who's gay, and he asks, "What's up now?" And I'm just like, "Well, I'm a Christian now," and and he's like, "Whatever, don't really care about all that." I mean, I do feel compelled as a Christian, especially as a Catholic Christian, to be able to, I guess, in essence, love up on them and show them the mercy of God so that they can see that God loves them right where they're at, but that what they're doing, is wrong. I don't know. I mean, what are you doing for people who who are in homosexuality or in homosexual relationships who you are friends with? I mean, how do you show them the gospel, I guess, or do you just...
Well, I've found the most useful thing is to sort of watch for moments of opportunity. People are often closed to hear something, in which case, don't cast your pearls before swine. Not to say that those people are swine, but that's sort of the usual interpretation of that verse. What I would do is just, love and do normal things with those people, and then at some point there may come a moment when they are prepared to hear about the Christian faith, even maybe if they're not prepared to hear about what it says about homosexuality. I think, we've both had the experience of suddenly coming to recognize that God is someone of such overawing beauty and power that there's no question of whether you would give up sexuality for him, because, you're exchanging trifles for the pearl of great price. But, you have to watch for those moments and pray for those openings and let the Holy Spirit guide you towards them, because otherwise you're just beating your head into the wall.
Thank you, Mary, for your call. We really appreciate that. And that actually brings up a question that I have, exactly what you're saying here, Melinda, like friends that I have that I've known, years ago, who live far, far away. They know who I am. I know who they are, and I feel like, I have to be kind of careful what I say, but not too careful. I'm not trying to hide my bushel, my light under the bushel basket. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of tough to walk that line.
Well, I've found that you can usually get a sense of what people are and are not prepared to hear. Yeah. But the most important thing, and perhaps the most essential witness that we do, is just by showing that we have something which is so wonderful, so beautiful, and so, if you'll let me use the word seductive, that you would want to give up for it something that you would otherwise believe is your identity.
Absolutely. I guess the frustrating thing for me is because these people live so far away, they don't see me or my wife on a daily basis. They don't know how at peace we are, how joyful we are. They just don't know. So I'm just waiting for that opening. You know what I mean?
Well, I would commend them to Blessed Marianne Cope, who is the beloved mother of outcasts and also happens to have my birthday for her feast day. Ah.
And I just read something about her where she's being elevated in the life of the church.
I haven't heard that myself, but I would love to hear it. She's also the patroness of HIV/AIDS, so a very close saint to this community, I think.
Understood. We're going to take another call before we go to the break. Let me give you that phone number. It is 1-888-318-7884. We're talking about same-sex attraction and Melinda's journey here. 1-888-318-7884. We go now to Tony, also in Ontario. He is in Oakville. Hi, Tony.
Hello there. Hi. Just a quick question. I guess just a question to the speaker. Thank you very much for sharing your personal, journey with us. Just from the standpoint of someone who deals a lot with teenagers and so on, and as we all know, at that point in their life, they're experimenting and exploring and so on. I've done a lot of reading on, I guess, some of the psychologists that have made links between emotional elements and family relations and so on to possible the genesis of attractions. I would like to hear maybe what your take on that is, and if that played any factor in your journey, and if you know anything, what would be your take on all of that? Because I find that it's out there, the information is out there, but as you and I both know, there is a very powerful lobbying group or movement that seems to sort of have it all hidden, and it's not so well known out there, especially for youth, of course.
Part of the difficulty is that for every statistic on homosexuality, there is an equal and opposite statistic, and everyone has massive critiques of everyone else's studies. The truth, as far as I can tell, is that no one really knows what causes it and whether the causes are psychological, partially biological, ideological, developmental. There's a tremendous array of different things that seem to be causal for different people. In my own case, I've sort of gone into my past very deeply looking at it, and I can't find any particular evidence to support the most popular psychological theories in terms of a father wound or a failure of my mother. I have a fabulous mother who is the mother of 8 children and was extremely close, supportive, stay at home with us all the time. I have a father who taught me a tremendous amount, and I have a wonderful relationship with him. So I don't see anything there within my personal family dynamic that would go towards supporting those theories. But I think the Vatican has it dead on the head when they say in the Catechism that it's taken a variety of forms in a variety of cultures, and that its genesis is not fully understood.
Does that help you, Tony?
Yes, he does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling. We do have an open line here by calling 1-888-318-7884. You can join in the conversation with Melinda here on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live. We're glad you're with us. Stick around. It's been called the most important media project in the history of the Catholic Church in America. Catholicism is the DVD tour de force by Father Robert Barron that takes the viewer on a ride through 15 countries and over 50 locations to reveal the truths of the Catholic faith in a visually breathtaking and compelling way that they won't soon forget. 10 episodes spread over 5 DVDs in an approach that is both intellectual and accessible. Make Catholicism the perfect gift for those in your life who seek to know more about the faith. This Christmas, make a difference in the lives of those who are seeking by exposing them to the Catholicism DVD series. Catholic Answers is making it available through the end of the year at a very special price. Log on today to Catholic.com or phone 888-291-8000 to find out more about what one writer called the most vivid catechism ever created, a high-def illustrated manuscript for the 21st century.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Sermon. In Matthew 11:16, Jesus said, "To what shall I compare this generation?" He then compared it to children who antagonize each other with expectations impossible to fulfill. John the Baptist fasted and abstained from wine, and they said he was possessed by a demon. Jesus came eating and drinking, and they called him a glutton and a drunkard. But wisdom is vindicated by its works. Jesus was always concerned about reality and not merely how things appeared, and he still is. Talk is cheap. Jesus came eating and drinking. He also suffered and died on the cross for us, where his words are vindicated and heaven has been opened to us. The lover is the one who is willing to sacrifice. He designed us to be lovers, to put ourselves out for others. That's how we know that we love them. I'm Father Vincent Serpa for Catholic Answers. Catholic.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
We're talking with Melinda Selmys about her incredible journey from being an atheist and a lesbian to being a mom and a very happy Catholic. And I want to ask you before we go back to the phones, Melinda, do you get some criticism of your work from gays, lesbians who see you as somehow sort of traitorous or being judgmental? Do you get much of that?
Well, I'd like to answer this in two ways. The first is not a lot. The second is that I've had a couple of somewhat funny experiences. One was when I spoke at Notre Dame, some protesters showed up to read queer poetry.
Oh, my.
And it was a bit surreal. There were all of these nuns and homeschool mothers standing around listening to people rhapsodize about masturbation. So that was a bit odd. But in the end, a number of the protesters came up and thanked me for having come. So I think I said something different from what they expected. I also was once portrayed in a made-for-TV movie as someone who had been made straight through the love of Jesus and electroshock therapy.
Oh, my.
So apart from that, though, for the most part, no. I think if you put this church's position in a way that is reasonable and compassionate, and you don't go around using the S word or talking about people being objectively disordered in their personality or whatever. Most people are willing to accept, at least in my experience, that you have a different viewpoint from theirs.
Good to know. Let's go now to Jane listening in Florida. She's listening to Ave Maria Radio 98.5. Hi, Jane.
Hi. I was just in the car listening to your program.
Yes.
And I was very interested, since there's a situation in our family that is very deeply hurtful, in which we have someone in our family who is a young woman who is in a relationship with a married woman, who, of course, is keeping it hidden, who was raised in a Christian home, and who has never had other relationships before this relationship. So I was just wondering if you could give us any guidance as to how to. We have done everything in the world to speak to her and everything, but nothing working. But she does claim to be a Christian, and we know she loves the Lord.
And this is her first experience of any kind, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we know that it's a very strong hold in her emotionally, and it was this thing that started out because she's young, and like I said, she hadn't had any other relationships. And
Okay.
And, yeah, basically that's the story.
All right, Melinda?
Well, I would also suggest my email box. With these family situations, there's very often levels of nuance that, first of all, you wouldn't want to share on the air, and secondly, that I couldn't answer on the air in the amount of time that we have. So it's melinda@vulgatamagazine.org, or you can go to my blog, sexualauthenticity.blogspot.com, and leave a comment, and I'll get back to you. That said, there are very often situations in which people are not prepared to hear things from family members. You can see this situation with Saint Monica and Saint Augustine. And what Saint Monica did is she went to the Lord in prayer, and she persevered for something like 15 years, and eventually Augustine met the people who could do something about it as a result of that intercession. In those cases, what you want to do is be there, be supportive, keep the lines of communication open, and make it clear that you love irregardless of the other person's lifestyle or their sins or their choices or their attractions. And that makes it easier, for the prodigal son to decide that he's going to make the trip back to his father's house.
Very good. Jane, thank you for calling. Let's go now to Roseanne in San Jose. Hi, Roseanne. Are you there, Roseanne?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
I have a daughter that ran away when she was 16, and that was about 23 years ago. And when she left, she sent me a letter telling me about her favorite things, and one of them was lesbian sex. I wrote her back, and I told her I loved her, and I have tried to be loving to her, but I really hate the things that she does. She's been a stripper and a dominatrix, and had, sometimes she goes and has affairs with men, and then she thinks that will please me, but I keep quoting back to her something that sums it up for me, is the saying of I don't even know if it's true, but it sort of sums it up. This old Irish priest, he said it's not the hetero or the homosexual, it's the sex outside of marriage that the church has a problem with.
Yes,
so anyway, we're totally estranged
true.
Right now. I'm sorry, what?
I was going to say, yes, he's dead on the nail with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
He's exactly right that it's not, the orientation, but outside of marriage.
Yeah.
But go on.
So anyway, But she's also she's more open to her brother than she is to me. But she's still mad at him recently because has pretty much cut off contact with him because he wouldn't agree with her that gays should be married. And he's not Catholic or anything, but it's just his personal opinion. But he doesn't have a right to it in her universe, you know. So I have trouble. She's really shut me off, and I just don't know what to do.
Well, there's probably, again, nothing that you can do except to take the suffering of being separated from her and rejected and go with that to the cross.
Well, that's what I've been trying to do. That's really lovely advice. Thank you. I'm glad you see things.
It's not easy,
no.
But it's one of those things, and that sort of intercession, especially a mother's tears and sorrow, are tremendously efficacious within the spiritual realm, and you have to trust that God has some sort of plan that is probably beyond anything either of us could come up with. That was certainly my experience within my own life, is I couldn't have predicted the way that the Holy Spirit was going to go blowing through my life before it actually happened.
Sure. Roseanne, thank you very much for calling. We have time for one more call, and that's going to be Bonnie in Oakland, California. Hi, Bonnie. Bonnie, are you there?
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I grew up, I was a ballet dancer, and I have a lot of artist friends. Many of them are gay. And since some years, I was a fallen away. Now I'm back in the church, and some of these friends are coming with me to church, but they're not ready to make the leap. Some of them are fallen away Catholics, so not ready to make the leap to come back to the church. So I'm looking for ways that I can, give me some supportive suggestions, what to do and what to not do so that I don't overwhelm them too soon. Like, I thought, let me call my friend and tell him that you're on the radio, but then I chickened out. So, some ideas of what to do. And in San Francisco Bay Area, of course, we have a very prevalent gay culture, you may know.
Yes. Well, my experience is that, if you are sort of bringing people into contact with the church, you're doing a tremendous amount right there. And I had friends who dragged me off on day trips to monasteries and things like that. And at the time, I was sitting in the pews thinking, there's that crucified God of theirs who's telling all of humanity it has to suffer. This is awful. And, a very strong internal resistance. But at the same time as that resistance was sort of rising up, it was also being eroded. So I think it sounds like what you're doing is exactly right. Continue to do that, continue to pray, continue to maintain the friendships, and then God will work through you.
Great advice. Thank you for calling, Bonnie. And one more time, Melinda, if you could give us that website.
Sexualauthenticity.blogspot.com is my blog, and my email address is melinda@vulgatamagazine.org, and I would be more than happy to hear from any of your viewers who didn't get a chance to call in, or perhaps who had issues that were too personal to discuss on the air.
Sounds great. Melinda, thank you so much for joining us this very fast-moving half hour. Coming up on Monday, it's going to be an open forum for non-Catholics with Father Sebastian Welch, and Why Do We Pray to Mary with Patrick Madrid. Have a great weekend. God bless.